Vergangenheit was the past tense, remember? So let's see what we learned in the second course about the past tense. In the Vergangenheit, in German, you have two ways of saying something in the past tense. You either choose the verb to have, haben, plus the special form of the verb that include ge. Ich habe gehabt. For example, as you can see, I have watched or I watched in English. In German, translated, it would be Ich habe geschaut. So the main verb is schauen, to watch, and therefore you use haben, or in other words, you say ich habe because the pronoun is I, and the verb haben with I is habe. Ich habe geschaut. And geschaut is the special form of the verb schauen. And those are the forms that you have to learn by heart. Another example would be I wrote. Ich habe geschrieben. Ich habe from the verb haben and geschrieben, the special form of the verb schreiben. The main thing that you have to keep in mind that haben is usually used with verbs that don't include movements. Like to write something, to do something, to see something. Those are like 70% of all verbs in German. There are some exceptions, however, that you also have to keep in mind. But the main idea that haben comes with verbs where you don't move. And of course, those verbs have to be done in the past. An example would be, yesterday we played football. Gestern haben wir Fußball gespielt. Gestern haben wir Fußball gespielt. Aha, you remember? The special form of the verbs should be the last word in the sentence. In this case, we have gespielt, that comes from the verb spielen. And gespielt would be the end of the sentence. An example would be the verb reden, which means to talk. Let's see. So the special form would be geredet. Geredet. As long as you know that, the only thing that you have to do now is change the verb haben based on the pronoun. So you say, ich habe geredet. Du hast geredet. You talked. SES hat geredet. Wir haben geredet. Ihr habt geredet. And sie haben geredet. That was the first form of the Vergangenheit. The second part is almost the same, but instead of haben, you use the verb sein, or the verb to be. And again, each verb has a special form that usually has ge in it. As an example, I jumped. To jump is springen, and the special form that should also be learned by heart is gesprungen. The pronoun is I, therefore you say ich bin. And the entire sentence would be ich bin gesprungen. I jumped. Ich bin gesprungen. If you can remember, if you want to say something like I was, you have two ways. You could either say ich bin gewesen, and gewesen is the special form of the verb sein. Ich bin gewesen, or you use the shorter form ich war. Ich war. Both versions are correct, however, people usually tend to use ich war more often. Another example would be I went. Gehen. And the special form is gegangen. The pronoun is I, therefore you say ich bin gegangen. Ich bin gegangen. If you compare the verbs with each other, you could see that you use to be or sein with verbs that you actually move while you are doing them. To jump, to go, to swim, and so on. So the differences between haben and sein are only whether you move while doing this verb or not. Again, there are some exceptions, but this is the main rule. A similar sentence would be yesterday we went home. Gestern sind wir nach Hause gegangen. Gestern sind wir nach Hause gegangen. And again, gegangen would be at the end of the sentence. So here, both haben and sein have the same rule. The special form of the verb would always be at the end of the sentence. Let's go through the verb gehen one more time, which means to go. As you know, gegangen is the special form that never changes. Gegangen. And because it's a verb where you move, you use sein, based on the pronoun, of course. So you say, ich bin gegangen. Du bist gegangen. Sie es ist gegangen. Wir sind gegangen. Ihr seid gegangen. Sie sind gegangen. Free time. Free time or leisure time in German means Freizeit. Freizeit. The word hobby in general in German means das Hobby. Das Hobby. Let's start with some hobbies, like drawing. Drawing, or to draw in German, is zeichnen. Zeichnen. And to paint is malen. Malen. Let's see how we can use those two verbs in sentences based on the pronoun. Let's start with ich. Ich zeichne. Du zeichnest. Es zeichnet. Wir zeichnen. Ihr zeichnet. And sie zeichnen. In der Vergangenheit, you say, ich habe gezeichnet. Ich habe gezeichnet. So the verb zeichnen takes haben, and gezeichnet is the new special form of the verb zeichnen. You might know this verb from the last course. To sing means singen. Singen. Let's start with ich singe. Du singst. Es singt. Wir singen. Ihr singt. Sie singen. And the Vergangenheitsform is ich habe gesungen. Ich habe gesungen. As I said, this should be already known to you. To read is lesen. Lesen. And you use this verb in the following way. Ich lese. Du liest. Es liest. So the do form and the ses form are the same. And then back to wir lesen. Ihr lest. And sie lesen. The Vergangenheitsform is, however, ich habe gelesen. Ich habe gelesen. Hiking, which is really popular in Austria, for example, is wandern. It's popular because most of Austria is between the Alp mountains. So everyone here likes to hike. Wandern means hiking. Wandern. And you use this verb the same way as the verbs before it. For example, ich wandere. Du wanderst. Es wandert. Wir wandern. Ihr wandert. And sie wandern. However, in the Vergangenheit, this verb, as one could think, does include movement. Therefore, it is ich bin gewandert. Ich bin gewandert. Don't forget this. A hobby such as horse riding in German is reiten. Reiten. This one is an old one. Sport machen is to do sport. Sport machen. To watch TV is Fernsehen. Fernsehen. And of course, schauen as well. Fernsehen. To run, this is also an old word. It means laufen. Laufen. Even though it's an old verb, let's see how we can use this verb in a sentence. Ich laufe. Du läufst. Es läuft. Wir laufen. Back to the normal. Ihr lauft. And sie laufen. Obviously, this is one of those verbs that take sein in the Vergangenheit. So you say, ich bin gelaufen, for example. But remember, the forms du and LCS are a bit different. Läufst and läuft, with a umlaut instead of normal a. To go shopping, for example, is einkaufen gehen. Einkaufen means shopping or to shop, and to go is gehen. Einkaufen gehen. And as you can see, or as you can remember, einkaufen is a verb that has two parts in it. Ein and kaufen. Therefore, when you want to use this verb in a sentence, it's a bit more, not difficult, but more different. For example, you say, ich kaufe ein. So the first part is going to be at the end. And you only change the main verb, which is kaufen, which means to buy, but when you add ein at the end, it automatically means to shopping. So we have ich kaufe ein, du kaufst ein, again a umlaut instead of normal a. SES kauft ein, wir kaufen ein, ihr kauft ein, and finally, sie kaufen ein. So ein is going to be at the end of the sentence, even though you want to add different details to the sentence. And the Vergangenheit is ich habe ein gekauft. So you take the special form of the verb kaufen, which is gekauft, and you add ein at the beginning. Ich habe eingekauft. To dance is tanzen. Tanzen. Movies and books. In German you say Filme und Bücher. Filme und Bücher. And Bücher is the plural form of the word Buch. Shall we start? First, you have the word story, which you already know. Die Geschichte. Die Geschichte. plot is die Handlung. Die Handlung. Character is der Charakter. Der Charakter. An author is either Autor for the man form or Autorin for the feminine form. Autor, Autorin. As you know, if you want to make a word for a woman, whether it's a profession, for example, or something else, you only have to add en at the end. Autorin. The same thing goes with writer. Schriftsteller, Schriftsteller or Schriftstellerin. Schriftsteller, Schriftstellerin. If you want to say to take place in, you say stattfinden in. Stattfinden in. And as you can see, the verb stattfinden is a verb that has two parts in it. Statt and the main verb finden. Therefore, if you want to use this verb, you change the verb finden based on your pronoun and you add statt at the end of the sentence. Es findet statt means it takes place, for example. Es findet statt. Es findet in Berlin statt. It takes place in Berlin. Es findet in Berlin statt. A sequel is die Fortsetzung. Die Fortsetzung. A main character is Hauptfigur. Haupt, which means main, and Figur is another word for character. Hauptfigur. Try to pronounce it a bit faster. Hauptfigur. Exactly. Now let's go through some adjectives that you can use to describe a movie or a book. For example, exciting would be spannend. Spannend. The opposite, boring, is langweilig. Langweilig. Adventurous is abenteuerlich. Abenteuerlich. An adventure, or in other words, the noun of this adjective is Abenteuer. So be careful. Abenteuerlich is an adjective, adventurous, and Abenteuer is the noun, the adventure. Fun would be lustig. Lustig. The adjective hateful, for example, would be hassvoll. Hassvoll. And Hass means hate, voll means full. So it's the exact translation of the English form. Hassvoll. This might be an old one. Slow is langsam. Do you remember this adjective from previous lessons in previous courses? Langsam. And if you want to say a lot of something, you say viel, and then you add the thing that there is a lot of it. Viel. Pets in German means Haustiere. Haustiere. Starting with simple words such as dog, der Hund, der Hund. A cat is die Katze, die Katze. A puppy in German is either Puppy or der Welpe. Der Welpe. A hamster is exactly like the English word, der Hamster. Der Hamster. Just like the word Goldfish, which is exactly the same in German as well. Der Goldfisch. Der Goldfisch. However, you have to be careful because fish is written with SCH and not only SH. Goldfish. A rabbit is der Hase. Der Hase. A snake is die Schlange. Die Schlange. A parrot is der Papagei. Der Papagei. A turtle is die Schildkröte. Die Schildkröte. A doghouse in general is das Hundehaus. Das Hundehaus. Animal house would be das Tierehaus. Das Tiere, house, and so on. A leash is die Leine. Die Leine. A collar is das Halsband. Das Halsband. A cage is der Käfig. Der Käfig. A vet in German could either be der Tierarzt, or die Tierärztin. Die Tierärztin. And the difference is that the first word is the masculine form of the word and the second word is the feminine form. But as you can see, Tierärztin, here you don't only add en at the end, but you also change the a into a umlaut. And those are one of the words that are exceptions. So you add en and you also change a into a umlaut to make the word feminine. And the word Arzt is one of those words. Arzt, Ärztin. Tierarzt, Tierärztin. This might be an old verb for you. To play is spielen. Spielen. However, this might be a new verb. To feed, and especially to feed animals, you say füttern. Füttern. Try to pronounce it again. Füttern. Yeah, exactly. To take a walk, whether it's alone or with your pet, you say spazieren. Spazieren. A walk, or the noun of this verb, is Spazierung. Spazierung. So we have spazieren and we have Spazierung. To train an animal is trainieren. Trainieren. And obviously it comes from the verb, the English verb, to train. Trainieren. However, this verb also goes with humans. So if you want to say, I train for something, you use the same verb. And if you want to say, I train my pet to do something, you use the exact same verb. Trainieren. To chase is verfolgen. Verfolgen. Folgen alone would be to follow. Verfolgen is to chase. However, be careful. This verb is one of the verbs that do include two parts, but they are not separate. So verfolgen stays the same no matter what. Ich verfolge, for example. Ver stays put. To bark is bellen. Bellen. Zukunft or the future. Zukunft means future. And don't worry about it, Zukunft in German is actually pretty easy. You only have to use this verb, werden, which translated to English is the same as will. I will play, I will do, I will go, and so on. The same thing is in German. Werden is the main verb. Werden. And you change, of course, this verb based on the pronoun. For example, for ich, you say ich werde. I will. Du wirst. You will. Sie, es wird. He, she, it will. Wir werden. We will. Ihr werdet. You will in plural. And finally, sie werden. They will. And then you simply add the verb that you want to do in the future. And of course, the second verb is going to be in infinitive. So you only changed the verb werden. Let's see some examples. The first sentence is I will play. Ich werde. And then comes spielen. And be careful because spielen is going to be at the end of the sentence. Just like the other verbs and sentences we talked about. Another example, you will drink. Du wirst trinken. Du wirst trinken. Something like we will do sport is wir werden Sport machen. Wir werden Sport machen. Some words that tell you that the sentence is going to be in the Zukunft or in the future are, for example, tomorrow, which is, as you probably already know, morgen. Morgen. And the day after tomorrow is übermorgen. Übermorgen. Something like in 2 days, for example, is in 2 Tagen. In 2 Tagen. And don't forget the N at the end of Tagen. Even though days or Tag in plural is Tage. In this case, you have to add the N. The reason behind it is going to be discussed in the future, but not for now. The same thing goes with years. In 10 years, in German would be in 10 Jahren. In 10 Jahren. Even though the plural form of the word Jahr is, as you already know, Jahre. But in this case, again, you add the N at the end. Next week is nächste Woche. Nächste Woche. And next time is nächstes Mal. Nächstes with an S, Mal. Let's try some sentences. Tomorrow I'll talk to my mother. In German it would be Morgen werde ich mit meiner Mutter sprechen. Morgen werde ich mit meiner Mutter sprechen. So as you can see, sprechen is going to be at the end of the sentence, and it's going to be also in infinitive. This is really important. We will read a new book tonight. Wir werden heute Abend ein neues Buch lesen. Wir werden heute Abend ein neues Buch lesen. Again, lesen is going to be at the end of the sentence. You will pay in 3 days. Sie werden in 3 Tagen bezahlen. Sie werden in 3 Tagen bezahlen. So you have the pronoun, the verb, and the word that tells you that the sentence is in the future, which is in 3 Tagen, and the second verb, which is at the end of the sentence. We will learn how to speak German. Wir werden Deutsch sprechen lernen. So, see how many verbs you have in the English sentence. Will, learn, and to speak. So we have 3 verbs. Wir werden, we will, is the first verb. Learn how to speak. In German, it's the opposite. You say sprechen lernen and not lernen sprechen. Because in this case, we will learn. Learn is the main verb. So obviously it's going to be at the end of the sentence. Wir werden Deutsch sprechen lernen. Another way of saying this sentence would be by adding zu. Wir werden Deutsch lernen zu sprechen. But nobody says it like this. This is the correct form. Wir werden Deutsch sprechen, and then the main verb, lernen. Accusative. Accusative. So let's go through it step by step and see what accusative actually means. So accusative is a grammar case that changes the articles, which are der, die, and das. Another word to describe accusative is direct object, or the direct object in the sentence. For example, he eats apple. The direct object in this sentence is apple. What does he eat? So the question that you have to ask is was, or what. In other words, the noun that could be the answer to the question what is usually accusative. And in German, as a way to recognize accusative, you change the article of the word. However, it is really simple in accusative, because the only form that changes is the der article. As you can see below, der would be den or einen. That comes from ein. Other than that, die and das and die for plural stay all the same. So we have die as a direct object, it is also die or eine. The same thing goes with das. It also stays das or ein. And finally, die, the plural die, is also die. So only der changes, and it turns into den when the article belongs to a noun that is a direct object in the sentence. Or der changes when it is the answer to the question was. What does he eat? He eats the apple. Let's take this sentence as an example. Ich kann jeden Tag den Zug nehmen. I can take the train every day. You already know that Zug is der Zug. However, the reason why we can't write der Zug is the following. You know that ich is the pronoun of the sentence. And of course, kann is the main verb, which is can. Jeden Tag is the answer to the question when. We don't need that for now. However, den Zug is the answer to the question was. Was kann ich nehmen? What can I take? I can take the train. So the train is the direct object of this sentence. And because in the original form it's der Zug, you know that der changes into den when it is the direct object. Therefore you say, ich kann jeden Tag den Zug nehmen. And of course, nehmen is the second verb that comes at the end of the sentence. Does it make sense so far? Let's continue. Another sentence would be, we eat the apple and the banana. Wir essen, Pronoun and Verb, den Apfel What do we eat? We eat the apple. So the apple is the direct object, and in the original form it's der Apfel. Therefore you change der into den. However, after that you say und die Banane. Die Banane, the article is die, and you know that in accusative die stays the same. So now we have two accusative words or nouns. One of them has to change, the other stays the same. So only the words that have the article der are the ones that you should be careful about. Another sentence is I have read the book. Ich habe das Buch gelesen. Ich habe das Buch gelesen. Was habe ich gelesen? What did I read? The book. Das Buch. And das Buch, the article is das, and das stays also the same. So the direct object of this sentence is das Buch, but it stays the same. Ich habe das Buch gelesen. Why is the ball not here? Warum ist der Ball nicht da? Here you have to be careful. Der Ball in this sentence, for example, is not the direct object. Der Ball is the subject. As you can see, we can't ask the question was in this sentence. Der Ball ist nicht da. Der Ball is the subject and not the direct object. So here it is right and correct to write der Ball and not den Ball, because the meaning of the sentence would be completely different. So be careful. Another sentence. The family has a dog. Die Familie hat einen Hund. Die Familie hat einen Hund. The family is the subject, hat is the verb, and einen Hund is the direct object. However, here we use einen, a dog, and not the dog. Einen Hund is a dog, and den Hund is the dog. Die Familie hat einen Hund. As you can see, while you are building the sentence in your head, you have to be careful about the articles and whether they change or not. At first, that could be difficult and complicated and it takes time, but with practice, you are going to get much faster. Let's see another sentence. My son has a friend. Mein Sohn hat einen Freund. Mein Sohn hat einen Freund. Mein Sohn is the subject, hat is the verb, and einen Freund is the direct object. Was hat mein Sohn? What does my son have? He has a friend. Er hat einen Freund. Try to reverse this sentence, which means instead of saying my son has a friend, say my friend has a son. How would the sentence go? The correct answer would be mein Freund hat einen Sohn. So mein Freund is the subject and einen Sohn is the direct object. Correct. However, if the direct object is feminine, for example, mein Sohn hat eine Freundin, my son has a female friend or a friend, eine Freundin stays the same because die or eine are unchangeable in accusative. Mein Sohn hat eine Freundin. Einen Freund, eine Freundin. Another sentence. The sister writes a story. Die Schwester schreibt eine Geschichte. Die Schwester, the subject, schreibt, the verb, and eine Geschichte, the direct object or the answer to the question, was schreibt meine Schwester? What does my sister write? Die Schwester schreibt eine Geschichte. And eine is die Geschichte, and die in accusative stays the same. Dative. And just like accusative, dative is a grammar case that is used to describe the reason why the articles of the nouns changes sometimes. As you can see here, just like accusative, dative changes the articles, der, die, and das, and of course the plural. However, this only happens when this noun is used as an indirect object, this time in a sentence. In dative, the question asked should be wem, and wem means to whom in English. For example, to whom am I giving the book? Next, we are going to talk about some things that are going to help you to figure out whether the sentence or this noun dative or accusative. But for now, what you have to know that dative is the same as the indirect objects. And it answers to the question wem, which means to whom. And the third most important thing is that sadly, dative changes all articles. Not like accusative that only changes der into den. Here, it's going to be a bit more complicated. Starting with der in dative is going to be dem with an M. And the same goes with einem. The same thing is with das. Das is also changed in dative into dem or einem. Opposite to accusative, where das stays the same and only der changes. In dative, both der and das change into dem or einem. However, die would change to der. It doesn't make any sense, I know, but it is like that. Die in dative changes into der and einer with an R. So in accusative it stays the same, but die in dative is turned into der. And finally, die plural is changed into den, just like the der form in accusative. But in addition, you have to add an n at the end of the noun and not of the article. For example, den Büchern. The original word is die Bücher, and in dative you say den Büchern, so you add n at the end as well. I would recommend for you to draw a map and write how the articles change both in accusative and dative, and run and go through the map several times until you get it. Again, with practice, with time, you are going to get really fast at it and you don't have to think about it anymore. But for now, it is really important to know which article changes to what and in which case, whether it's dative or accusative. It's really important to be able to distinguish between those two cases. So we have der and das into dem and einem. Die is going to be der and einer, and the plural is den with an n at the end of the noun. See, I told you it's more complicated than accusative, where you only change der. But we are going to go through it. Let's see this sentence, for example. Peter gibt dem Lehrer das Heft. So you can easily see that Peter is the subject or the pronoun. Gibt is the main verb. To give comes from geben. Peter gives the book to the teacher. So the question you could ask in the dative is to whom? To whom is Peter giving the book? And the answer is dem Lehrer, to the teacher. And because Lehrer in the original form is der Lehrer, der would change into dem. So you write dem Lehrer. So dem Lehrer is the indirect object. And finally, das Heft. Was gibt Peter dem Lehrer? What does Peter give the teacher? The notebook. So yes, das Heft is in this case the accusative noun. And it stays das Heft because das Heft originally is also das Heft, and it doesn't require any changes in accusative. Does it make sense? I told you before that there are some special things that would help you to recognize whether the noun is in accusative or dative. The first thing that you have to know is that there are some special verbs that always take dative. For example, schenken. Schenken means to gift. So you gift something, this is accusative. But to gift someone, this is dative. To whom am I gifting this? See? For example, let's see this sentence. Das Kind schenkt einer Freundin Blumen. The kid gifts a friend flowers. Das Kind is the subject. Schenkt is the verb. Einer Freundin is the indirect object or person. Your question would be, to whom is the kid gifting flowers? To the friend. And die Freundin or eine Freundin in dative would be einer Freundin. And Blumen are the direct object, therefore they say the same. In this sentence you don't even need an article to the Blumen. Das Kind schenkt einer Freundin Blumen. Another special verb is helfen, to help. To help someone. This someone is always going to be in dative. Ich helfe dem Mann. Ich helfe dem Mann. I help the man. Wem ich helfe? Ich helfe dem Mann. So dem Mann is going to be the answer to the question, wem ich helfe. And because dem Mann is originally der Mann, and der in dative changes into dem, you say dem Mann. Another verb would be gehören. Gehören, which means belong. This something belongs to me. Me is the dative noun. Or for example, in this sentence, the car belongs to a friend. Das Auto gehört einem Freund. The car or das Auto is the pronoun. Gehört, the verb belong, is the verb, obviously. And finally, you are asking to whom does this car belong? And the answer is to a friend, einem Freund. Das Auto gehört einem Freund. Einem Freund because it's originally der Freund or ein Freund, and in dative it changes into einem Freund. And just like the first sentence we saw, the verb geben, to give, is also a special verb. I give something, this is accusative. I give someone something. Someone is in dative and something is in accusative. For example, in this sentence, Ich gebe meiner Mutter einen Apfel. I give my mother an apple. The questions that you could ask are, for example, was gebe ich meiner Mutter? What do I give my mother? I give her an apple. Therefore, einen Apfel, because Apfel is in this case accusative, because it answers to the question was, the direct object. And you add einen because Apfel is originally der, which changes in accusative into den or einen. However, if you ask, to whom am I giving the apple? The answer is, of course, meine Mutter, to my mother. So this noun is in dative. So we have to change the article based on the case dative. Meine Mutter is the original form, and in dative the feminine word changes into adding an R. So it's meine Mutter. So as you can see, you can change the articles, der, die, das, ein, eine, mein, meine, dein, deine, and so on. And they all go the same way. Ich gebe meiner Mutter einen Apfel. The second special thing that you have to know is that dative usually comes in nouns that are before Präpositionen, prepositions. For example, in this sentence, the man goes to the bus station. In German you would say, der Mann geht zu dem Bahnhof. Zu means to, and dem Bahnhof should be in dative. Because the second most important question that is asked by dative is wo, which means where. Wo. Where does the man go to? The man goes to the bus station. Bus station, it is dative because it comes after zu, which is a preposition. It's originally der Bahnhof, therefore in dative der changes into dem, and you write dem Hauptbahnhof or dem Bahnhof. This doesn't apply to all prepositions. There are some that are not for dative, but for now we are going to go through the ones that are for dative. So the first one is zu, and then comes mit or with. For example, in this sentence, I play with the kid. Ich spiele mit dem Kind. Ich spiele, pronoun verb, mit, preposition. Therefore, automatically you should know that the noun after mit would be in dative. In this case, das Kind changes into dem Kind. Ich spiele mit dem Kind. Ich spiele mit dem Kind. And the final preposition for today is bei, at. For example, you are at a friend's place. Du bist bei einer Freundin. The word place you don't have to mention this in German. You are at a friend, translated into English, is the same as you are at a friend's place. Du bist, pronoun verb, bei, preposition, einer Freundin, a dative noun. Die Freundin changes into, or eine Freundin changes into einer Freundin in dative. So we have zu, mit, and bei. As I said, there are a couple of more, but for now we are going to focus on those 3. Let's look at more general sentences. Like, do you want to help my friends? Willst du meinen Freunden helfen? See here, the verb that you should pay attention to is the last verb, helfen. And helfen is a verb where the noun is in dative. Therefore, you say meinen Freunden. Why meinen Freunden? Because you are talking about plural. And as we know, plural words in dative, the D changes into den. In other words, meinen instead of meine. And as you can see, you add the N at the end of the word Freunde. So it's Freunden. The meaning stays the same, with or without N. Freunde and Freunden both mean friends, but it is necessary to write the N at the end. Willst du meinen Freunden helfen? Wir sind in der Schule. We are at school. In is also a preposition that takes dative. Therefore, you change die Schule into der Schule. Wir sind, pronoun verb, in, preposition, der Schule, the changed noun with the correct article. Wir sind in der Schule. I understand that at the beginning this could be a bit confusing, but again, with time and practice, it's going to get easier. Try to write some sentences, try to practice, try to talk in front of the mirror, for example, and build more complicated sentences now that you are capable of. The last sentence is, the house belongs to my family. Belongs is a verb where the noun is dative after. Therefore, you say, das Haus gehört meiner Familie. Das Haus gehört meiner Familie. So you change meine into meiner to make it obvious that Familie is the noun in dative. Dreams, in the future. Zukunftsträume. Zukunftsträume. Zukunft, the connecting S, and Träume. Zukunftsträume. Dreams about the future or future dreams. Let's start. To create a family, for example, is eine Familie gründen. Eine Familie gründen. So as you can see, in English, you say the verb and then the noun. But in German, to create a family would be eine Familie gründen. So you put the noun and then the verb. To find a stable job, einen festen Arbeitsplatz finden. Einen festen Arbeitsplatz finden. And you say einen because Arbeitsplatz in this case is the direct object. To find what? To find a stable job. And fest means stable. To be successful, erfolgreich sein. Erfolgreich sein. Erfolg means success and erfolgreich means successful. To buy a house, ein Haus kaufen. Ein Haus kaufen. Ein Haus stays ein Haus because it is in this sentence in the accusative, and thus in accusative stays the same. Therefore, you don't need to change anything. To have children, Kinder haben. Kinder haben. And here you don't have to add an article because Kinder is a plural noun. To be satisfied in general is zufrieden sein. Zufrieden sein. To travel the world is die Welt reisen. Die Welt reisen. Die Welt is here also in accusative. To travel what? To travel the world. But because it's feminine and feminine articles in accusative also stay the same, you are allowed to say die Welt. To be rich is reich sein. Reich sein. Reich sein. To have my dream job, meinen Traumjob haben. Meinen Traumjob haben. Traum means dream. And you say meinen because Traumjob is there. And in this case, it is an accusative. To have what? To have my dream job. Therefore, you write meinen. To finish university studies, or to finish university in general, Die Universität beenden. Die Universität beenden. Beenden means finish. And die Universität stays die Universität because it's an accusative, and die in accusative stays unchangeable. Something more fancy, like to have a boat, is ein Boot haben. Ein Boot haben. The word or the noun is das Boot, therefore you only have to say ein Boot. And be careful. Boot is written with 2 O's in German. And not like OA, the English version. To have a house on the beach is ein Haus am Strand haben. Ein Haus am Strand haben. As you can see, haben or the verbs in general in those cases are always at the end of the sentences. Ein Haus am Strand haben. However, if you use the verb with a pronoun, for example, ich habe ein Haus am Strand, the verb would automatically be the second word in the sentence, right after the pronoun. Ein Haus am Strand haben. Ich habe ein Haus am Strand. And this goes with all words and sentences that you've learned today. To be healthy is gesund sein. Gesund sein. Gesundheit is health. And to be healthy, gesund sein. Gesundheit, gesund. Tomorrow's weather. In German, das Wetter von morgen. The weather of tomorrow. Das Wetter von morgen. It will be hot. Es wird heiß sein. Es wird heiß sein. It will be. Es wird sein. And then when you add hot or anything else, you put it between wird and sein. Es wird heiß sein. The opposite, it will be cold. Es wird kalt sein. Es wird kalt sein. The complete opposite, it will be neither hot nor cold, in German is es wird weder heiß noch kalt sein. Es wird weder heiß noch kalt sein. So, neither nor in English is translated into weder noch in German. And obviously the verb sein is at the end. Es wird weder heiß noch kalt sein. And this applies to everything. weder noch, neither nor. It will be nice, or it will be good weather. Es wird gutes Wetter sein. Es wird gutes Wetter sein. Now let's start with some verbs. It will rain. Es wird regnen. Es wird regnen. So as you can see, or as you can remember from our last lesson, regnen means rain. The same thing goes with it will snow. Snow is an old word for you. You had it in the second course, and it is schneien. Schneien. It will snow, therefore is es wird schneien. Es wird schneien. It will be stormy, or there is going to be a storm, in German is es wird einen Sturm geben. Es wird einen Sturm geben. Geben means to give. However, in this case, geben comes from es gibt. There is. Remember? And es gibt in the future is es wird geben. There is going to be a storm. Es wird einen Sturm geben. I understand that in English this doesn't make sense to use the verb to give in such a sentence, but in German it actually makes sense. It will be cloudy. Es wird bewölkt sein. Es wird bewölkt sein. And bewölkt is the adjective of cloud. Wolke. Es wird bewölkt sein. It will be cloudy. Es wird bewölkt sein. It will hail. Es wird hageln. Es wird hageln. Hageln is a new verb now. It means to hail. It will be windy. Es wird windig sein. Es wird windig sein. And just like bewölkt, windig is an adjective that comes from the noun Wind. The wind. Wind, windig. The noun and then the adjective. Es wird windig sein. It will be a beautiful day. Es wird ein schöner Tag sein. Es wird ein schöner Tag sein. The opposite. Es wird ein schrecklicher Tag sein. Es wird ein schrecklicher Tag sein. Schrecklich is also a new word which means terrible or awful. Schrecklich. Es wird ein schrecklicher Tag sein. The question, what's the weather like tomorrow, should not be with the verb werden. It could be, it doesn't have to. You can simply say, wie ist das Wetter morgen? Wie ist das Wetter morgen? The fact that you have the word morgen in your question is enough evidence that the sentence or the question is in the future, that you are asking about something in the future. You don't have to write werden as well. You could, you don't have to. Too much, whether it's about the weather, about homeworks, about how difficult the German language is, you can simply say zu viel. Zu viel means too much. Zu viel. The opposite, a little, ein wenig. Ein wenig. And this is the literal translation of the English form. A is ein and little is wenig. Wenig is little in the sense of quantity and not size. Sentences and words that you could use if you want to meet up with friends in the weekend, for example. In German you say Freunde am Wochenende treffen. Freunde am Wochenende treffen. Freunde means friends. Am Wochenende means at the weekend. And treffen means to meet, which you already know. A question such as do you have plans for the weekend is Hast du Pläne für das Wochenende? Hast du Pläne für das Wochenende? Pläne is the plural form of plan and für means for. Das Wochenende is the weekend. Hast du Pläne für das Wochenende? Ich bin beschäftigt means I'm busy. Ich bin beschäftigt. Ich bin beschäftigt. The opposite is ich habe frei. Ich habe frei, for I'm free. You could say ich bin frei. You can also say ich habe frei. I don't know what the reason is, but both forms are correct. Ich habe frei or ich bin frei. I don't know what I will do is ich weiß nicht, was ich machen werde. Ich weiß nicht, was ich machen werde. Ich weiß nicht is the first sentence and the second sentence is was ich machen werde. And as we learned in the second course, the verb in the second sentence should be at the end of the sentence. Therefore is werde at the end of the sentence. Ich weiß nicht, was ich machen werde. I will go to the cinema. Ich werde ins Kino gehen. Ich werde ins Kino gehen. And as you know, to the cinema is always ins Kino, no matter what. Ins Kino. You can't say zu Kino. That's wrong. I will go out with my boyfriend or girlfriend. Ich werde mit meinem Freund ausgehen. Oder ich werde mit meiner Freundin ausgehen. Mit meinem and mit meiner, because mit is dative, therefore der becomes them and die becomes der. Meinem, meiner. I will be at my parents. Ich werde bei meinen Eltern sein. Ich werde bei meinen Eltern sein. Now, this is a sentence where you have dative because of bei. So, meine would become meinen because the plural is den in dative. However, the word parents is Eltern, so there is already an N at the end. Therefore, even if the word is in dative, you don't have to add an extra N, because you already have one. Ich werde bei meinen Eltern sein. I will have dinner in a restaurant. Ich werde in einem Restaurant zu Abend essen. Ich werde in einem, because in, therefore it's dative, in einem Restaurant zu Abend essen. And zu Abend means in the evening. So I will eat in a restaurant in the evening. I will see what to do. Ich werde sehen, was zu machen ist. Ich werde sehen, was zu machen ist. Ich werde sehen is the first part. Was zu machen ist the second sentence. Therefore, ist should be at the end of the sentence. Ich werde sehen, was zu machen ist. I will see what to do. I will think about it later. Ich werde später darüber nachdenken. Ich werde später darüber nachdenken. Nachdenken means to think about. And darüber is another word for about. So in this sentence you have two words for about. However, it's correct. Ich werde später darüber nachdenken. will get some rest. Ich werde mich etwas ausruhen. Ich werde mich etwas ausruhen. Sich ausruhen is to get rest. And etwas in this case means some. Ich werde mich etwas ausruhen. And you say mich because the pronoun is ich and sich changes with ich and becomes mich, as you already know. Remember? Mich, dich, sich, uns, euch, sich. I will see some friends. Ich werde einige Freunde sehen. Ich werde einige Freunde sehen. Einige in this case also means some. I will see some friends. And you say einige and not etwas because Freunde are persons. And for persons you use einige. I will have to study. Ich werde studieren müssen. Ich werde studieren müssen. Now, this sentence could be different based on the thing you want to say. If you want to say, I have to study in the university, then you use the verb studieren. But if you have to say, I will have to study as if in, I will have to study for the exam, then you say, ich werde lernen müssen. Ich werde lernen müssen. I will take a tour is ich werde eine Tour machen. Ich werde eine Tour machen. Future trips and some sentences that you might need when talking about the trips and travel associated things that you want to do in the future. Future trips in German means zukünftige Reisen. Zukünftige, which is the adjective coming from the noun Zukunft. Zukünftige and Reisen, trips. Zukünftige Reisen. Shall we start? Starting with a question like, will you go somewhere in 2 months? Fahren Sie in 2 Monaten irgendwohin? Fahren Sie in 2 Monaten irgendwohin? When talking about travel, in general, you usually use the verb fahren and not gehen. Because gehen means that you are going on your feet, but fahren is about driving somewhere or flying somewhere. And irgendwohin means to somewhere, literally. Only somewhere means irgendwo. But if you want to say that I'm going to a specific destination, then you say irgendwohin. Fahren Sie in 2 Monaten irgendwohin? I will travel as much as I can. Ich werde so viel wie möglich reisen. Ich werde so viel wie möglich reisen. As much as I can, so viel wie möglich. In other words, literally is translated into as much as possible. Ich werde in ein heißes oder kaltes Land gehen means I will travel to a warm or cold country. Ich werde in ein heißes oder kaltes Land gehen. I will be away for the weekend. Ich werde dieses Wochenende weg sein. Ich werde dieses Wochenende weg sein. Weg, as you already know, means away. And dieses means this weekend. I will take some days off. Ich werde ein paar Tage frei nehmen. Ich werde ein paar Tage frei nehmen. Ein paar means a couple of days. And frei means free. So if you say frei nehmen means to take off in English. I'll go to the seaside. Ich werde an das Meer gehen. Ich werde an das Meer gehen. Ich werde an das Meer gehen. The reason why you say an das Meer and not, for example, zu Meer, you don't have to think about it for now. I'll go to the mountains. Ich werde in die Berge gehen. Ich werde in die Berge gehen. I will book a flight. Ich werde einen Flug buchen. Ich werde einen Flug buchen. Einen because accusative, the direct object. Was werde ich buchen? Ich werde einen Flug buchen. I will take a ticket. Ich werde ein Ticket nehmen. Ich werde ein Ticket nehmen. I'm calling to book a room. In German it's ich rufe an, um ein Zimmer zu reservieren. Ich rufe an, um ein Zimmer zu reservieren. Reservieren is the same as buchen. You can also say buchen in this sentence. Ich rufe an, I'm calling, in this case means zu, and ein Zimmer zu reservieren, to book a room. and I understand that in this case the German sentence has two tus in it. You have and zu, which they both mean to, but in German this is how you say a similar sentence. Ich rufe an, ein Zimmer zu reservieren. I will wait for some news. Ich werde auf Neuigkeiten warten. Ich werde auf Neuigkeiten warten. Neuigkeiten means news in this case. And auf, I'm waiting for. I hope that you don't need to use this sentence, but if you do, I need to quarantine in German is Ich muss in Quarantäne gehen. Ich muss in Quarantäne gehen. I will see where I can go. Ich werde sehen, wo ich hingehen kann. Ich werde sehen, wo ich hingehen kann. And hingehen means to go to a specific place. And not only go. You could say simply gehen, but if you want to sound more fluent, you could use hingehen instead. I will save money to travel. Ich werde sparen, zu reisen. Ich werde sparen, zu reisen. I will save money to travel. You could say, ich werde Geld sparen, like actually use the word money, which is Geld, in this sentence, but the verb sparen is usually only used with money. So it's automatically understandable that you mean money. And again you have your zu reisen, to travel. Think about it like that. Is to, and zu would or should come right before the verb anyway. In the future we are going to discuss more examples that explain this situation much better. This is the coronavirus lesson, which means we are going to go through some words that could be useful with the topic of corona in general. In German, you could either say coronavirus or COVID-19. COVID-19. This word you already had in the last lesson. Quarantine, which means Quarantäne. 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 A pandemic is Pandemie. Pandemie. For lockdown, you have two words. You could either say lockdown, just like the English word, Or you could say Abschließung, which is the translation of lockdown. Abschließung. Lockdown oder Abschließung. Social distancing is soziale Distanzierung. Soziale Distanzierung. Distanzierung. Distancing. A mask is die Maske. Die Maske. A COVID swab is COVID Abstrich. COVID Abstrich. And if you want to say no swab, you say Nasenabstrich. The same with mouth swab, Mundabstrich. Attestation form is Bestätigung. Bestätigung. Something like maximum number of people is maximale Anzahl von Personen. Maximale Anzahl von Personen. Personen is persons, and in plural the word already has an N in it. Therefore, you don't have to add an extra N even though it is in the dative form because of von. Something like contact to a COVID case, Kontaktfall or Kontaktperson. Kontaktfall or Kontaktperson. So you could simply say, ich bin eine Kontaktperson. Hopefully you won't need to say that, but in case. Kontaktfall, Kontaktperson. Curfew is Ausgangssperre. Ausgangssperre. Try it again. Ausgangssperre. Ausgang comes from the verb ausgehen, which means to go out. And Sperre is curfew. And as you can see, there is also this connecting S. Ausgangssperre. Borders are die Grenzen. Die Grenzen. One border is die Grenze, and plural, many borders are die Grenzen with an N. open borders or closed borders are either geschlossene Grenzen, geschlossene Grenzen, or offene Grenzen. Offene Grenzen. Geschlossene comes from the verb schließen, which means to close. You already know the verb schließen, right? To close. And geschlossene is the adjective. The same thing with offene. Offene means open, and the verb from this adjective is offen. Geschlossene Grenzen, offene Grenzen. Vaccine is Impfstoff. Impfstoff. To vaccinate, like to vaccinate someone, impfen. Impfen. This is the main verb. And the word Impfstoff comes from the verb impfen. However, if you want to say to get vaccinated, you could say sich impfen lassen. Sich impfen lassen. And the verb that you are allowed to change when you put it with other pronouns is the verb lassen and of course sich. So impfen is the verb that stays the same. For example, you could say ich lasse mich impfen. Ich lasse mich impfen, which means I'm getting vaccinated. Or literally it means I'm letting myself get vaccinated. Ich lasse mich impfen. And you change the verb lassen and sich based on the pronoun. However, impfen, or the main verb, always stays at the end unchangeable. This is one of the extra complicated ways of saying things in the German language. Health means Gesundheit. Die Gesundheit. Do you remember what the word was for healthy, the adjective? Gesund. Exactly. Health is die Gesundheit. A doctor could either be der Arzt or die Ärztin. Arzt for the masculine form and Ärztin for the feminine form. You have to add en and change a into a umlaut. Do you remember this from the previous lessons? A medical specialist in general is either der Spezialist or die Spezialistin. Die Spezialistin. Here you only have to add en. Therefore, the word Arzt and Ärztin are the exception. Usually, only en should be enough to make a word from masculine to feminine. A nurse is Krankenschwester. Krankenschwester. An assistant is assistent. Assistent. For the feminine form, you say Assistentin. En. The word assistant is no exception. The hospital is das Krankenhaus. Das Krankenhaus. And krank means sick. So the word Krankenhaus comes from the word krank, and Haus means home or house. A department, whether it's in the hospital or in the mall, it doesn't matter. A department in general is die Abteilung. Die Abteilung. And if you want to say to be in good health, you say bei guter Gesundheit sein. Bei guter Gesundheit sein. Sein or the verb is at the end of the sentence. However, if you want to say I am in good health, here you can change the verb into the second word. Ich bin bei guter Gesundheit. The doctor's office is Arztbüro. Arztbüro. So you just bring the two words together. Arzt and Büro. And here you don't need the connecting S. Hospitalization is Krankenhausaufenthalt. This is a long word, so try to divide it. Krankenhaus, which means hospital. Aufenthalt, which means to care, for example. Krankenhausaufenthalt. Try it again. Krankenhausaufenthalt. Medical checks, or to check in general, is Beurteilungen. 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 A hospital bed is Krankenhausbett. Krankenhausbett. And as you can see, again, you only have to bring the two words together. A side note, when you have such words that are actually two words combined together, the article of those words depends on the article of the second word. In this case, Bett. Regardless of the first word or the article of the first word, it doesn't matter. You only have to look at the article of the last word. In this case, Bett. So you have to see the article of the word Bett, which is das Bett. Therefore, hospital bed or Krankenhausbett is das Krankenhausbett. Visiting hours are Besuchszeiten. Besuchszeiten. Besuchs, which means visiting with the connecting S, of course, and Zeiten, which means times. Besuchszeiten. An ambulance is Krankenwagen. Krankenwagen. In Austria, you can dial 133 for 911, and in Germany, you could dial 110. To go to the hospital is zum Krankenhaus gehen. Zum Krankenhaus gehen. Another side note, zum is the same as zu dem. It's some kind of shortcut Germans use, but we are going to talk about it later. Zum Krankenhaus gehen.